Hi everybody, welcome to our discussion on Chapter 6 in our Owens and Valesky book that looks at the human resources impact on schools. Ironically, as I record this, I'm doing this after a lecture that I thought took way too long, but was one of the best lectures I've had since coming to Oklahoma. I taught this face-to-face last night, and the group that I was working with really had good ideas. Really talking about how some of this stuff really doesn't work in Oklahoma. I'm going to talk about staffing considerations. I'm going to talk about hiring mistakes, things like that. And the main result that everybody basically said was, what does it matter if I can't find teachers in my building anyway? I'm going to hire who I need to hire, and I'm going to do what I need to do. So I like the fact that I'm recording this lesson because I can present this theoretically, and I don't have to present this from the cynical perspective. I'm a cynical person. I agree with mostly what everybody was saying, but I also think it's important that you give this that perspective and that outlook, because you have to at least understand the theory and the practice that's behind this. And that's what I want you to do. So if you want to be a successful principal, you hire the best teachers. If you want to be a successful superintendent, you hire the best principals. Not only do you hire them, you have to retain them as well. So I've made an argument throughout this class that organizations have made the job of the school principal even more difficult than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, or 80 years ago. So how do you fix it? You hire effective personnel. Organizations need to know how to recruit, retain, train, and develop people. And if they can do it, those are going to be your most successful organizations. So how do you do this? It's easier said than done. Some districts, and based on kind of our discussion, most of Oklahoma, can't recruit good personnel to save their lives. That means that they have to retain the personnel that they have and train them to be effective. Good organizations not only hire good people, but they keep them, and that's something that we're going to be talking about, how you do this in this chapter. The book presents this really in research. I would rather do principles of human resources so that you can see how those pertain to schools. This is more of a building up process, meaning that we're investing in the hires that we make, and we make sure that they are effective and they do a good job, and that helps increase capabilities as well. So what is human resource management? Human resource management is the utilization of individuals to ultimately achieve organizational objectives. All managers have the responsibility to concern themselves with human resource management. It's their job, and they have to make sure that, that the functions of human resources are being followed at every level of the organization. I'm going to spend some time and I'm going to talk about the functions of human resources, because if we were doing a full course on human resources in education, this would honestly be what I would cover. I would look at all 5 functions. I would talk about them, and I would explain how they pertain to each of your positions and each of your roles within your organization. So number 1, we're looking at safety and health, and we're going to work our way around this way. When we talk about safety and health, you have to remember that the function of safety and health in schools is that schools must be safe and they must be healthy for all employees. Think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We still come back to that. Schools have a legal, moral, and professional obligation to provide safety and health from all their employees. How's this regulated in schools? It's regulated through OSHA, and it's also regulated through school boards. Employee and labor relations. This depends on the context of your state and of the organization. Being in a right-to-work state, we don't have to worry much about labor relations, but we do have to worry about our relations with employees as well. Unionized states have different contracts, different salaries, and different ways of looking at what's important and what the role and responsibilities of teachers should be. Staffing is always important. I think in schools, staffing should be your #1 priority. If you're in the summer right now, you should be worried about, what am I going to do to staff my building so they can effectively start on day 1 of the school year? What does that look like? How am I going to be able to find people that are going to be effective in the school or effective in the organization? Human resource development. Anytime I see HRD, I relate this to professional development. But it can also be things like tuition remission, outside trainings that people go to and attend. You got to consider all of these as well when you're looking at human resource development as a function. And then we go to the big one, of course, which is compensation. Compensation is more of an extrinsic motivator than it is an intrinsic motivator, but that being said, I don't know of one organization where people that are in it are not interested in how much they're going to get paid. That is one of your roles and something that you have to do as a leader within the organization. So what happens? What are the important definitions? We have job analysis. This is the process of determining skills, duties, and knowledge required for performing jobs in an organization. I always say for job analysis too, this is kind of my way of knowing whether or not an organization is going to cut jobs or expand jobs. Because if you do an analysis, then you know how valuable and vital that job is to the overall happening of the organization. A job is a group of tasks that must be performed for an organization to achieve its goals. So the position is the responsibilities. So a job and position are different. So everybody in your organization that works there, they should have a position, and the position should match what the job does. If the position does not match what the jobs are in the organization, then you're going to have a significant disconnect, and that's going to be a problem when you're looking at your organization. So job analysis. In any job analysis, there should be 6 questions. Number 1, what are the physical and mental tasks that a worker is supposed to accomplish? When is the job to be completed? So if we're doing a strategic plan, how many years is that strategic plan going to be, and how many years is that strategic plan going to take? Where is the job to be accomplished? This is the easiest one in schools. It's done on site. How does the worker do the job? What are the requirements? What are the responsibilities? Here's another big one. Why are we doing this? Why is the job done? Why do we have this subject area? Why do people have to learn about it? What are the qualifications? What are the certifications that an individual needs to actually perform the job? So what do? We do staffing considerations. These are conducted, through job analysis, and it's done with organizational behavior specialists, normally working in conjunction with the human resources department. The question that I always ask people is, have you ever been a part of a staffing consideration in your job? What does that look like? This is when an individual will come in and they'll basically do a full reevaluation of jobs and say, we can afford to get rid of this person, that person, this person. Did you have colleagues that were concerned that their job was in danger or jeopardy? And if so, what did that really look like? So what is staffing? If I were to give you a definition of staffing, staffing is how we acquire, deploy, and retain a workforce of quantity and quality to create positive impacts on the organization's effectiveness. In an easier sense, it's basically we're finding the right people, we have a system in place to do it, we understand what a quality employee looks like, we understand the quantity we need, and we understand how staffing is going to contribute to the effectiveness of the organization. So, recruitment. Recruitment is very easily stated. This is when you attract individuals on a timely basis in sufficient numbers that have the right qualifications, and you tell them to apply for jobs within an organization. How do you recruit in schools? Well, you do it possibly by word of mouth. You do it through media advertisements. You do it through newspapers. I've even seen some districts do it by television. Some do it by going to job fairs. Some do it by partnering with universities and creating university and school district partnerships in order to accomplish that. So, we start recruitment when we do an employee requisition. This is when the manager basically says, this is when the employees need it. In schools, it's mostly semesterly, or it's for a school year, and what their department's going to be, what their job title is, and other specific details. Internal candidates normally have the first rights to apply, and that's a good thing, because if they think that they're better served for another job, they should be considered first, especially if they've given their time and energy to the organization in the first place. You should know the difference between internal and external recruiting. Internal recruiting focuses on the vertical staffing and who's there right now. This is basically succession planning, because we're looking at people within the organization to fulfill certain roles that might be opening in the next year or two. When you do external recruiting, you're saying, hey, we don't have enough people, and we're focused on the external labor market. And we'll use advertising, we'll use a search firm, or we'll use that sort of thing. So, employer referrals, it's the #1 way people find a job. I say more than anything, it's who you know more than what you know. And this can be the case especially in education, and especially when you're applying for a superintendency. employee incentive programs are the biggest method of recruitment right now for large corporations. But as I say that, I had class last night, and people were telling me about the $100 and $200 bonuses in gift card form that people were getting for referring a working employee. What if they offered you a graduate class if you referred an employee? Think people would try to recruit if you did that? I think that'd be an effective recruiting method. So selection. You need to pick people to match the jobs that are good fits within the organization. For a theory, it's person-environment fit theory, Rocco and LaFrench. It's also what I did my dissertation on. So this is a theory that I would use for selection. If you pick the wrong person, this can be costly. It takes an average of 2.5 times the salary of somebody to replace who doesn't work out within an organization. So administrators can take up to 180 days to hire. I think that's a little egregious in this state based on what everybody's been telling me, but I can't speak from personal experience. I know of a couple of school districts near Tulsa where it took them 60 to 75 days to hire a building principal. Superintendent hires can take even longer. Background checks take a long time, and while somebody's waiting, they might get another offer. Then it's up to you. Do you take the other offer, or do you let it ride and wait for the position that you might really want? So different times, different organizations have multiple levels in order to hire an employee. Different people have to give input, and you have to hear the input from everybody else before you make an ultimate decision on the hire. This is also a time-consuming process. So background checks and multiple interviews would most likely apply for people in high-level administrative positions. Applicants for clerical positions would take a short word processing test and have a short employment interview, and that's probably going to be it. But the higher you are in an organization, the more that you're going to have to do in order to screen, test, and check people's characteristics and qualifications. So the applicant pool, this is an easy definition. This is the number of people recruited for a particular job. Your goal is to be applying for the jobs that not too many people want, because in most areas, that means you should be able to make more money. Let's think about Oklahoma as an organization. When we're looking for teachers, we find that the teachers that we're looking for most in this state really are math, science, special ed, and foreign language teachers. Once again, that should come as a surprise to nobody. One of the things that does surprise me is the fact that we struggle to find social studies teachers sometimes in this state. But English teachers, there's a massive oversaturation. So that can be interesting when we're examining what the applicant pool looks like and what it hosts. So if you do human resources as a degree, you have to learn how to do forecasting. In my finance class, I have everybody do a forecasted strategic plan that looks at internal and external forecasts. For quantitative, it's regression-based. For qualitative, it's replacement charts. It's important to see if there's going to be changes in the workforce and how that's going to look like. Because there's a degree of uncertainty in any organization, that can cause problems as well. You can try, if you over-recruit, then you have to downsize. If you train, you know that people have aspirations for higher positions within the organization. So that's all important as well. So when there's a shortage, you recruit creatively. If you can give compensation incentives, you want to do that. If you can do signing bonuses and incentives as well, that can help. Training programs, because you want to prepare people to move into new and different positions. And as I always say, if it's not working, change your selection standards in the first place. When there is a surplus of employees, you have to be restrictive in who you're hiring. Don't fill the position. If they leave, the employee is not replaced. Reduce hours. One of the things that you can do to save money in your district that I've always said, you can switch to a 4-day work week during the summer months. Close the school down on Friday. Don't let anybody in the school. Cuts down on maintenance, energy, and facility costs. And if people don't like it, they can leave. You can offer early retirements. This is your most common way of doing it if there's a surplus or if there's a budget crunch in education. Most of the time, early retirement incentives look good for prospective people ready to retire. They want to see what retirement looks like. We'll talk a little bit more about downsizing and layoffs because, and as always, when you say downsizing and layoffs, that's the worst case scenario. Here's what I want you to know about downsizing. When you say the words downsizing, you are right-sizing and you are restructuring. The company says that we're going to change the people that are employed, we're going to change the structure of the organization, and it'll shrink, but it'll improve performance. When you say there's going to be downsizing occurring, people get scared, they get terrified, they don't want to work for the organization, they might start looking for other jobs, even if it doesn't impact you. So think about what your experience has been like when an organization has downsized. So what are the negatives associated with it? The cost associated with downsizing causes low morale. When layers are removed, advancement in the organization becomes more difficult. Workers could seek better opportunities or other opportunities and fear that they're going to be laid off or that they might have to leave. Employee loyalty is significantly reduced. If you think that it happened once, trust me, it takes years in order to build that loyalty and confidence again that it's not going to happen again. Institutional memory could be lost as well, meaning if you offered an early out or an early retirement incentive, that could have negative impact as well because you're losing the memory of people that have worked within the organization. Here's the one that tends to happen the most. The remaining workers are required to do more. In schools, what that looks like is the principals have more duties and class sizes increase. When the demand returns, meaning you didn't follow a strategic plan and you didn't see that there was going to be a swell of babies coming in the next 4 or 5 years, then the cuts might have been too deep and you can't find the right employees. You could also have discrimination lawsuits as well if somebody feels they've been wrongfully terminated against this. So that's a basic overview of human resource functions that I would teach in a human resources class. Now I'm going to talk about where human resource functions relate to into the research related to organizational theory. So when we talk about what organizational theory looks like, we say that we didn't really look at how people experience schools yet. This took a while and this took time to come. We focused on quantification, measurement, and sampling. You're going to see me say the gold standard. Well, the gold standard is still quantitative research. That's not going to change. Hoy and Miskell claimed scientific research was the only way to generalize knowledge. So then we moved on to looking at what's the difference between an academic, or I would say a scholar, and what a practicing principal thinks. So academics want abstract relationships. Principals want to know what it is, what's it going to do, and how's it going to impact me and my school. Academics are focused on people that detach from emotions, meaning it's what the generalizable skill says you do. The principal says, we have to represent our emotions and we have to do what our emotions are telling us to do. Academics try to write about the rational and orderliness, where principals are the ones that are going to write about things that are chaotic in the organization. So, your case studies for this class, think about it in terms of those. Your case studies are actually, you're going to be writing about the chaotic situations that you experience. Why? Because it's more interesting and it will relate more to the job and the role that a future principal has in a school district. So, this can impact your work and your research. Literature 30 years ago really said that we can start doing qualitative research. It is much more respected. But the research priority in class, the gold standard is always anything that is quantitative. If we can take something and we can make it quantitative, it's probably going to have more weight and more priority. But qualitative is much more respected due to the switch in emphasis on people-oriented skills in education. So I had you read and watch a video on Carl White, which was the article on organizations as loosely coupled systems. These were educational organizations basically saying that they were subsystems in the organizations that were related to each other, but they have their own identity and their own autonomy. So this would be an elementary school being different than the middle school, or in the building even, third grade classroom 1 different than third grade classroom number 2, or the guidance office being entirely different as well. So the study that I liked that kind of made more sense to me was this notion of dual systems research. This was, the early 80s, it said that loose coupling exists, but there are certain elements in each organization where there's a tightly coupled system. Non-instruction, things related to transportation and pay. I would argue classroom walkthroughs really has tightly coupled systems, because the observation function really is the one that says, well, hey, now we're watching more what goes on in schools, and we put administrators more in the classrooms. So we have more control, and we're yielding some of that in order to create a dual system in education. So I would argue that administrators have control over instruction, but only bureaucratically. This means that administrators can control the time. Who teaches who teaches what, and when classes run. Administrators can also control what students are assigned to classes, how the classes are grouped. If there's a limit of the number of people that are in a class, the administrator normally has autonomy over that.